The 11th Renaissance is here. Um, we had the Renaissance through the 14th through 16th century, and then we had the Enlightenment, around the 18th century. The Renaissance was, art and literature based and whatnot, and the Enlightenment was, of course, science based. Science and reason, they would say. And for some reason, we look at these as opposites, right? But I think something's changing. And I think for the first time, we're actually seeing a symbiosis of these sort of Renaissance features or characteristics and Enlightenment characteristics. Science, tech, and spirituality and religion and philosophy is coming back to complete the picture. Especially the more we learn about quantum mechanics, it starts to take us back to what all the great, ancient spiritual thinkers have been saying the whole time about the universe being non-physical, all being minds, whatever the case, the way, the way electrons behave differently, whether they're being observed or not, all these random things. But the more we really learn about the smallest level of reality, it's starting to tell us the things that the, ancient thinkers have always suggested. And so the reason I'm calling it the 11th Renaissance is because 11 is a very spiritual number. It represents the veil between physical and spiritual realms or non-physical dimensions. I like to call them spiritual realms, but you can think of them as just non-physical dimensions, right? Any dimension that doesn't have exactly 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time wouldn't have the physical characteristics that ours does. So literally pretty much every other dimension other than this one is non-physical in nature. And so that's why I'm calling it the 11th, is because, 11 represents that veil of, physical and non-physical. And that's what we're doing by creating. So right now there's more creative people than ever, aided by tech, sometimes even aided by AI, but AI or not, as we create. So creating is a psychedelic process. The word psychedelic is psyche and delios. Psyche is, your subconscious, your mind, the non-physical aspect of you, and delios means like to manifest, to bring forward from the background to the foreground. So by creating, what I think is happening is, as there's more creators than there's ever been, it leads to these climax points like during the Renaissance or the Enlightenment, where basically the veil between the physical and non-physical dimensions is just slightly weaker, so that creative people can tap in to deeper workflows. And it sounds crazy, but that's what I think is going on. And I like to call it the Imaginatrix, but a lot of artists have called it the Muse. The Muse is a very popular term. The Imaginatrix was coined by Terence McKenna. That's why I like that one. I think it describes it better. The Imaginatrix, the imagination, the non-physical dimension where the imagination resides. And a lot of great thinkers have had the realization that they believe they're being downloaded information almost. A lot of artists have said that as well. When they create the song that you like so much, that's your favorite song, when you really ask a lot of them, how'd you come up with that? They're like, dude, I didn't. It was shown to me. I heard it. They heard it in their non-physical experience, and they had to bring that subjective experience from their background into the foreground for other people to experience. That is psychedelic. That is mind manifesting. That is the creative process. So that's what I think is happening, is that it's almost as if everything is coalescing at the perfect time. Tech, science, art, spirituality, religion's back, and people are creating. So this is your sign to start creating. The next 75 years will be characterized by a prolific era of, I like, that's why I call it solar punk. So Lucius 11 is the solar punk future tech company, because solar punk is an aesthetic that says, hey, we can use tech to live harmoniously with nature, and we don't have to march down this like dystopian cyberpunk world, that like this Ready Player One world where Meta and frickin' Amazon rule everything and you live in VR. Nobody wants that, so that's why I like to call it solar punk. But that's what the next 75 years will be characterized by. It'll be the most prolific creation period in human history. There will be more inventions than ever. There will be more music than ever. There will be more art than ever. There will be more food produced than ever. There will be more clothes produced than ever. And especially as we can advance material sciences, and I might have to do a good portion of this, but molecular production and manufacturing, being able to make things on the really small level, alchemy is real. Well, that will be my next video, is that alchemy is actually about the transformation of consciousness, but we've transformed our consciousness to such a high degree that the original goal of alchemy is actually realizable now. We actually can literally do things like potentially turn base metals into gold, or whatever, carbon into gold, all types of weird, crazy things, especially as we advance molecular sciences and whatnot, and our quantum sciences. So that's funny that that's not what alchemy is about, but we transform the consciousness so hard that we might be able to realize that. But that's what's happening. So I call it the 11th Renaissance. But yeah, this is your sign. Start creating. Start producing. Have a garden in your backyard. Produce as many things as you can. Make music. Make make anything that you can. Anything that you can possibly make. Do that. And then anything that you can't make, find someone who can make that and engage with trade with them. We can cut out these huge corporations. But I'll do a lot of the manufacturing. Don't worry. I'll get some of the steps put in place so that we don't have to rely on big companies as much. But it starts with, communities, creation, and producing. So, the 11th Renaissance. I'll lead part of it. You guys can do some help. Don't worry. But it's I'll lead a good majority of it. Don't worry. You'll see where it's going. So, with that, I have nothing else to say. Create something. Bye, friend.